if you have a person that's incredibly self-aware and they're literally able to adjust to what their capabilities are at the time that the organization is the particular size that it is, that's fantastic. That's not going to be the majority of your employees. Okay, it's just not going to happen, right? And you do have a certain number of people that have just been pre-programmed, convinced to do certain types of things. One of the things that I've run into is a lot of people that feel that, well, I'm more successful if I manage more people. That's my success. I have 10 people now. I really need to be able to get to 30 people in the next 5 years. And I say that that's an extremely abstract concept. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? So I do spend some time getting people to understand that, we're not following anybody else's model. We're following my model, okay? And so you have to recalibrate what you consider success to be.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to talk about how leadership changes as your company grows. When you think about the number of employees that you have right now, and you look backwards, you have evolved as a leader. Your communication rhythms have evolved. A lot of the systems that you've used have evolved. And if you look forward, they will evolve again, and they will continue to evolve as your company grows, because it's just the way it works. Our special guest today is Dimitri Boylan, and he is the founder of Avature. And Avature is an HR SaaS company. They do a lot of stuff with recruiting and talent management. They're integrating AI into this, and they've got over 2,000 employees. They were number 225 on the SaaS fastest growing companies list. And Dimitri and I talked about his own evolution as the company grows. And so you have to think about the different breakpoints or inflection points of employees, because if you think about these communication rhythms, what worked with a fewer employees breaks down as you keep adding employees to it. And it really does as you scale up to these different levels, which we talk about the different levels inside this. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development inside companies, sort of turnkey. If you have managers that aren't really performing as leaders, we would love to talk to you and support you about how to do that. The way we do it is pretty unique, but we'd love to really think about how you're growing and scaling your people, not just your company. And that is what makes growing the company a lot easier. When you think about any evolution and you think about who can you talk to about it, you can come to me and have these conversations that you probably can't have with others, your executive team, your board, or even your spouse. I've had a lot of clients say that's the reason why they have coaches. And so if you're curious about that, just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Now here is the interview with Dimitri. Dimitri, how are you?
I'm good, Greg.
Gene, it's
Sorry,
okay.
Let's start it over. You know what happened? I got, when you hit the recording button, I have to approve it.
Okay.
So but now we're recording. So sorry.
Recording and
so
our
I
team
was
take care of all this.
recording that and looking down at your name, and I just saw the G and went with Greg because I was looking for my button.
We'll cut all this out. 1, 2, 3. Hey, Dimitri, how are you?
I'm good, Gene. How are you?
I am fantastic. Excited to talk to you about the evolving leadership culture within a fast growth company. Before we jump into that, I'd love for you to tell us about Avature.
Okay, well, Avature is a software as a service company in the HR sector. So we provide recruiting and talent acquisition, talent retention solutions for mostly large companies, typically multinationals, also governments. We have 6 or 7 governments as customers, and a lot of big companies. We have about 20% of the Fortune 500 as customers.
And you're a pretty big company, 2,000 employees, give or take.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into your journey to get there, but I'm kind of curious about the innovations that you see on the horizon for your space of the SaaS world.
I think the innovation conversation right now is being dominated by artificial intelligence, specifically machine learning. And, for software as a service and for HR, the category we're in, a lot of that is around AI related to text processing, chatting, matching candidate profiles to job descriptions, producing content to send out to prospects, and doing some sort of predictive analytics around the metrics that the companies have in their HR stack, what they're producing and analyzing to figure out how to deal with their employees and their potential employees.
And you're doing this with, a lot of your current staff. You probably even bring in some outside experts in different areas. Innovation in this day and world, do you have to go outside your current staff to be able to access those features?
No. We do it all in-house. The baseline artificial intelligence technology that's out there is open source. Okay, so Google has open sourced theirs, Meta has open sourced theirs. So there's a lot of open source. We do some. We sponsor some research in a couple of different universities. I sit on the chair on the board of directors of the artificial intelligence chair for Spain, and we do some research with the government of Singapore, which is also a customer of ours, but with the university there. So we're not afraid of interfacing with the scientific community, the academic community, and we develop our artificial intelligence very specifically to serve the HR community. So we can't just pick a large language model off the internet and plug it in and have it do what our customers want to do. We have to shape it to make it useful.
That makes sense. I want to switch gears first, Dimitri, because on Growth Think Tank, we really talk about the leadership that drives growth. I do feel like leadership is a very important component to all company success, whether it's just growth or even the challenges that we faced with marketplace or economic challenges. What are the driving principles of your own leadership, if we can start there?
Well, so first of all, I make it clear inside our organization that we are trying to achieve our growth and our sustainable competitive advantage through technology and innovation. Some companies are very sales driven. Some companies are very marketing driven. We're very tech driven. I would say maybe less than a third of our competitors are tech driven, even though they're technology companies. So my proposition to the engineering community and to the community that are geeky and like to work on tech stuff is that we're going to go very deep and be very technical. And I'll give you an example. We have about 1,900 employees. We have 30 salespeople. We have 500 core engineers. Now, we have competitors that have 250 salespeople and 250 core engineers. So the balance is skewed towards tech. And that allows us to do innovation, which is a little more tech than just producing features that you use to compete against other software companies. Innovation is a little harder than just sort of doing the obvious.
Dimitri, when you have grown to this point, over 2,000 employees, and really it takes different types of leadership at different stages. I know before we actually hit the recording on, you kind of gave some examples. At 15 employees, your leadership is different than at 60, and then changes again at 300. Walk me through some of those shifts that are happening at different inflection points.
Well, I always think of the company in terms of size, and I have this sort of model in my head. So I think of the under 30 company, the under 300 company. I think of the 600 person company. I think of the 1,200, and I think of the 1,800. So I have those models in my own head, and I have what I believe is different about each one of those layers. So as I start to plan going into the next category, I start thinking about what it is that we need to be able to do differently in order to function at that level. You mentioned before we started recording that you were talking to a manager who really doesn't have the same people that they had when they started. I have all of the same people from when I started, except for 2. So I think of the 30 people, when we were 30, I probably have 28 or 26 of those people still in that company. But they're not all in the same jobs. And I think that you have to, at some point, you have to explain to some people that the company is evolving and that maybe they were running these things before, but they're not going to run those things anymore. You're going to narrow your scope, focus on something specific, accomplish a different mission in the organization. And so I've spent a lot of time preaching flexibility to my employees. Don't expect to do tomorrow what you're doing today. Because if you bake that into your brain and you build a career ladder for yourself, okay, with these layers that you're going to reach at these various times, it's going to get into conflict with the evolution of the company. And we're either going to follow your vision of your career ladder, or we're going to follow the strategic vision that we need about how we operate. And I tell them it's going to be right here. It's how we operate, you know. But you can still have great success in the organization.
Now, he just mentioned that a lot of people are not in the same jobs as when they started. Now, a lot of CEOs I found get troubled with this. And a lot of employees are troubled because they don't want to let go of responsibilities as the company scales. And so they end up being a bottleneck. And so you just keep in mind that as the company grows, and you set this up very early, you say, look, you're going to have this for now, and then we're going to, take it away from you, not in a bad way, but just like give someone else a chance. And then you get to see where people are, you get to see them grow. And if you have a company that's scaling fast, it's a really good way to do that. Back to Dimitri. I know that some people are meant to be individual contributors. A lot of engineers maybe are really talented, and they're not meant to manage people. They don't want to manage people. Do you find that some people can be develop those leadership skills as they grow in jobs, and some people just choose not to?
Well, I think that, when you're running a company, if you have a person that's incredibly self-aware and they're literally able to adjust to what their capabilities are at the time that the organization is the particular size that it is, that's fantastic. That's not going to be the majority of your employees. Okay, it's just not going to happen, right? And you do have a certain number of people that have just been pre-programmed, convinced to do certain types of things. One of the things that I run into is a lot of people that feel that, well, I'm more successful if I manage more people. That's my success. I have 10 people now. I really need to be able to get to 30 people in the next 5 years. And I say to them, that's an extremely abstract concept. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? So I do spend some time getting people to understand that, we're not following anybody else's model. We're following my model. Okay. And so you have to recalibrate what you consider success to be. First of all, if you really buy into the company's success is absolutely essential to you. And if you're going to stay at the company for a long time, you really do need to make sure the company succeeds. So you need to think about what happens that allows the company to succeed. It's the same thing with innovation. We hire people that come in and they have this perception about what innovation is. And we have to sort of break that down and sort of reprogram that for them in order for them to actually be innovative. So I think you're always in a situation where you've got some kind of dynamic. I think one thing that we've done that's very good, though, is when we put people into management roles, first of all, I kind of like to put people into management roles that don't want to be managers, because I'm a little afraid of the people that really want to be managers. Okay. The second thing is, when we put people into management roles, the first thing we tell them is, you're in this role for 6 months and then you're out of it. You're out of it. You won't do it for more than 6 months. And the reason we do that is because if you put somebody in the management role and they're not working out, and then you take them out, they are ashamed. They feel like they failed and they leave the company. And everybody else around them feels like they failed. And they think, oh, that was a terrible thing to do. It's far better to say, you're going to manage this area here for 6 months, and then you're going to go back to being a sole contributor. And then if you did a good job, we will think about you managing something else later on, because you can't tell who's going to be a good manager until they start managing. It's a different job.
I love this. I want to go back to you talked about at 30 employees, you begin starting to talk about flexibility. You're not going to be in the same job. Things are going to change. When things hit to 300 employees, how did you have to change?
Well, so I had already run a company that had over 750 employees. So I think at 300 employees in Avature, I was, back where I had been before. Okay. I think the difference was that my prior company was hotjobs.com. It was an internet company. It was very fast growing, in the .com era, and things happened so fast that you didn't reflect upon anything that you did. You did it and then you did the next thing. Okay. Yeah. So no reflection there. I think this time around, when we were looking at 300, first of all, I start preparing for the 300 organization when we're about 150. I think you need to be a year ahead of the game. So knowing that you're coming up to 300 in about a year, you start thinking about, who can stay in their role, who needs to move to a different role. But I also did not bring in too many people from outside. Almost all my senior managers at Avature are homegrown. They're now in their mid to late 30s, and they started with me 15 years ago when they were in their 20s.
Fantastic. And is there any one thing that you had to focus on as you shift the leadership style of 300 employees? Was it?
Well, you get into a bit of so everybody gets into this challenge of we were talking before about the meetings. At 60 employees, everybody's just a doer. And you just tell the other person as you're walking down the hall, you're going to go do something. I'm going to do this. You're like, yeah, well, you do that. And then you run into the room and you have a little huddle, and then you run out, and everybody that was in the room actually goes out and does the thing. So they were all in the room.
Yeah.
So you get 15 people into the room, 15 people go out, 15 people do something. With 300, it's not like that, right? The people that are doing it were never in the room. So right away at 300, your first challenge is you now are playing a little bit of telephone. That's the first game you start playing at 300 is, well, there was a meeting, you weren't in it. And a couple of things that happened there. First of all, a lot of people say, well, why wasn't I in the meeting, right? I mean, this is one of the problems, because when you were 60, everybody was in a meeting, and now somebody's being left out of the meeting. Okay, like, well, this isn't right. Now I'm being excluded. Things are being decided without me. So you have to deal with that issue. And then you have to deal with the issue that this person needs to be able to, the person that was in the meeting needs to be able to communicate to another group of people and provide the same level of motivation that you provided in the meeting that this person was in with you. Because if the motivation and the excitement and the energy drops down through the telephone, okay, those people that are doing it are not as motivated. And that's the first thing as an entrepreneur you sort of discover, is that you got this intense energy in this 50, 60 person company, and you get to 300 and it's sort of like somebody took the gas out of the engine. Everything's kind of like, I don't know, I'm doing something that somebody just told me to do. And that's not your 60 person company.
Dimitri just talked about this term, playing telephone. This is a game that we play as kids where one person tells one person something, and it's probably pretty complex. And then the other person tries to tell the other person. And after it goes through 8 people, what they hear and what they receive is very different than what was said in the very first level. So that's the game of telephone. In our business communication, if they're not in the room, we've got to get better at communicating why and how to do the things and really help that motivation. I really love that part. So just reminding you of what the game of telephone is and reminding you to do it better and lead people, knowing that this telephone thing is an issue and you have to address it proactively. Back to Dimitri. Is there any one way to simplify, how do we get motivation, right? A thing needs to get done or a project needs to get finished, and you're trying to communicate that with someone, the doer on the team. And have you found any specific element that really keeps motivation where it should be?
Well, at 1800, we have a very high degree of autonomy in our groups. And the place where you get the most dangerous amount of turnover in tech is on the engineering side, right? So engineers can work anywhere. Okay, they get offers all the time, and the turnover can be tremendous, and that really makes it hard for you to build product. Okay, we've solved that problem. I'm not saying we don't have turnover, but we solved that problem in that we really have these small engineering groups that have a huge amount of autonomy. And they actually work together with the whole program office that coordinates the activity of all the different groups. And those groups actually come and present to executive management what they want to do each quarter. So they come to us with what they want to do. We don't go to them with what we want them to do. Okay. And they have become over time very, very good at understanding everything that needs to be done, because our mission is the same. We haven't changed our strategy. Our mission it's up there and everybody knows what it is. So they're smart people. And I say, look, you guys are smart. You read that. Okay. Think about where we are. Come in what you guys are going to do. Okay. And of course, you're going to have to do a bunch of things that you don't want to do, because another group is going to ask for some things from you, because everything is tied together. So you're going to have, but that's what goes around comes around. You know what I mean? You got what goes around and comes around. You got to do for this group's got to do for your group. Okay. And everybody understands that as a human being. And then you got to think about what you think we need to do to be successful using that part of the code that you're responsible for. And they go all the way down to, understanding what the customers want, even though some people think, oh, that's the back house, the back of the house. And I say, we don't have a back of the house and a front, because if you have a back of the house, then somebody has to be in the back, and you have to tell them they're in the back. And it's like, nobody's in the back here. there's no back of this bus.
The autonomous thing, a different way to say that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of the organization, people that are CEOs of fast growth companies go, I want people to take a level of ownership for their work. Do you talk about ownership at all in that context?
I think it's implicit in the fact that you are coming to me with what you think you should do. I mean, you have to.
Yeah.
I think what you have to be careful of with, sometimes I see people managing this way, they tell people, and by the way, you need to have ownership. You know, it's like, I don't own it. So, you know, I'm working on my resume over here. So, you know, I don't know if I own it. And I say to guys, you're going to need to tell me what is the next thing we should be doing to fulfill this vision over here. What do you guys need to do? Okay. And, you know, and you can adjust that, but letting them, you know, do that is allowing them to think about the whole business instead of narrowing it down and saying, well, you know, you guys do this certain thing, so you're only allowed to think in this box. People put people in a box, like, yeah, you're a programmer, so you think about this, and you're this, and you only think about that, and that becomes sort of a little stifling. The other thing I will add is that we have an incredible internal mobility program, because, you know, we have a younger generation here that is tuned to doing projects and, you know, having new challenges all the time, and I find that, you know, we move people around a lot. So there's always a discussion about who's moving where. And that helps a lot.
I want to wrap up today's conversation, Dimitri, we've been talking about leadership at different levels of the company. Over 1,000 employees, I would imagine things shift again. How would you say it shifts for the CEO, and how do you get prepared for that in advance of that shift?
Well, you get into a scalability problem as a CEO, right? And you get into a problem of knowing fewer people in the company. And that was accelerated with COVID, because work from home makes it harder for a CEO to know the people in the company, because CEO really needs the office to get to know people. Because when you're CEO and you just call up somebody to chat with them, they think they're getting fired. You know, they're like worried, like, why is the CEO calling me? You know what I mean? Whereas you can walk into a cafeteria and you can have a conversation with anybody, and they half the time they don't even know you're the CEO, maybe, you know, and so that's good. So I think at the 1,000 and above and the 1,200 and above, you need to spend more and more time just talking to people. I think one thing you have to be careful of is not, you know, when I was running Hot Jobs, which was publicly traded, and I had a board of directors, this was back in like 2000, early 2000, you know, the board was always on top of me for, I had too many reports. You know, I had like 20 reports. They didn't like that. They kept saying, no, you need 4 reports, 5 reports. I was like, I don't work with 5 reports. I need 20 reports. I think you have to be careful with the dogma about sort of like this tree structure that people sort of impose. You know, back then there was another common trend, was you had to get rid of the founder at some point too. Everybody believed that you had to get rid of founders until Steve Jobs came back and saved Apple. But, you know, before that, they're like, yeah, it's time to get rid of the founder now, you know, because he doesn't scale. So yeah, I think you have to, it's, you know, there's some big changes you have to make, but a lot of it is just relationships.
Yeah, I think a lot of CEOs underestimate the importance of relationships as their company scales. And I've seen it over and over. You got to have a closer relationship, and you got to understand the people and what's driving them and motivating them. So Dimitri, thank you so much for being here, being a part of the podcast.
Hey, fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Wow. What an incredible conversation about leadership. And I really love the depth and the different discussions, some unique elements in there about setting up flexibility early and often, moving people around. And that's just a common practice, and people get it. And it really does help them create healthier, more balanced leaders that allow the company to continue to drive forward. The part about people thinking and bringing the solutions to leadership is really interesting. I know that's what most companies want, is for these employees to be driving success and taking ownership. So hopefully you found all of that valuable. If there's any way we can help you as your company grows and scales, make sure you reach out to me at gene@genehammett.com. You can follow us at Core Elevation and Grow Think Tank, whatever makes sense to you. But one thing I want you to remember, when you think of growth, you think of leadership, think of Grow Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.